Hello and welcome to Red Mate. Today we're talking about Lionel Messi winning his 8th Ballon d'Or. I've got about 3 points I wanted to make just on the back of this, kind of reacting. I think it's been a little bit controversial the way it's kind of happened. A number of different people have felt there's a few other players that probably should have won it ahead of him, and obviously now Messi is currently playing in the MLS, which again raised a few points. But anyways, I wanted to get straight into it, and the first point I wanted to raise was essentially, is Messi the right winner, or did he deserve to win the Ballon d'Or this year? Looking at the season he had, start of this year, end of last. So I guess the biggest point that I wanted to make, and everyone's well aware, is obviously the World Cup. Messi, it felt like a fairy tale. It felt like it was written in the stars that he was going to win it, and he did. Feels a little bit like that maybe is got the biggest weighting on it. We look in the past, the likes of Luka Modric, who's won the Ballon d'Or on the back of reaching just the final where he didn't quite get over the line and win it. But the fact that he carried the Croatian team, who probably weren't the greatest team we've ever seen, but he was obviously a standout player, and being the captain and the ability he's got, we see him get to the final and it ends in an amazing result for Croatia. And I guess maybe as a country they overperformed a little bit there, and a lot of it was put down to him. So looking back on that season, you look at, Modric himself obviously won the Champions League and he had a lot of other individual achievements, but you could quite easily look to one of his teammates, the likes of Ronaldo, and say, he's scored a lot more goals, he's got a lot more assists, goal contributions. He's also won those same club trophies, but obviously just hasn't done as well in the World Cup. But, as a player, if you had to choose between one of those two players back then in that time, which was 2018, it feels to me everyone probably still would have chosen Ronaldo. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. So whether or not the award seems to go to the player who's had the best year in terms of trophies, I know we started to look at Modric was really the first person to do that, who won so much at Real Madrid, and then his World Cup kind of campaign was kind of a bonus on top of that. We've seen the likes of Benzema recently, all the goals he had scored, and it just kind of felt like at a time where the Champions League winner would kind of go on and win the Ballon d'Or. Even Jorginho, when he won the Euros, and then he won the Champions League with Chelsea, it kind of felt like he was just ticking all the right boxes in terms of trophies. Whereas for me, I always felt like the Ballon d'Or is the award given to the best player in the world, and sometimes that's not always the case. Obviously, it's a great argument to make, but for me, when you look at Jorginho and you look at all his trophies for that year, you think, congratulations, what an amazing year he's had. But if you then say to me at the end of that year, do you want Jorginho in your team, or do you want Messi, or do you want Mbappe? Do you want a list of all these other players, Ronaldo in there, Modric? For me, I feel like I would still be choosing the other players. And I guess it's really hard to make that case when you're just going off, that player is clearly better, because if you have to start putting it on paper and start putting value against how good a player is, potentially the easiest way to do that is to look at trophies. A big thing for me, I think, is goals and assists and impact on the team. But Messi, who's obviously won 7 prize this year, getting his 8th now, I think he's proven to the world, obviously, how good a player he is. I've always been a big fan of his, but the fact he's kind of been at PSG and it has felt like he's slightly on the decline in his career. Obviously, comparing him to himself in his prime is, again, going to be a really tough ask, but I think personally I would still be taking him in my team over a number of other players. But at the same time, I think there's another player I definitely want to mention here who has probably made a better argument for himself in terms of numbers and what he's putting up, and adding that to club achievements. So that guy's none other, and you probably have picked it already by now, but it's Erling Haaland. I mean, what a season he's had, moving clubs, changing countries, new league, everything like that. And he hit the ground running in the Premier League, smashing the Premier League record. I've got his goal stats here. In just last season alone, he scored 52 goals in 53 games, which is absolutely incredible. We saw him beat the Premier League record for a number of goals in a season, and he beat it by 4 goals, and he only did that in 35 appearances. So, he could have potentially scored more if he played all 38 games. But yeah, we obviously saw Man City win the treble, which consists of the Premier League, the FA Cup, and the Champions League, the biggest one of all that they hadn't won to that stage. And if anyone is sitting there, I guess, supporting Messi and saying he is deservedly the winner based on the World Cup, to me, it feels like maybe there's a little bit too much weight then put on the World Cup, because, on this channel before, I've definitely said in the past where the Champions League, I think, is a higher standard of football than the World Cup. We see the likes of, the host country, for example, is always going to qualify for the World Cup, and any player who's playing in the World Cup is not necessarily playing in the Champions League, whereas any player good enough to play in the Champions League will most certainly make themselves a Champions League player by moving to the clubs, and obviously the best clubs can obviously recruit, get better. But anyways, we look at Erling Haaland, speaking of the World Cup, he's someone who didn't even get to go, given he played for Norway, and unfortunately they didn't qualify. So, it's probably a trophy that realistically he's probably never going to win, and it feels a little bit rough to hold that against him, and he can have the year that he's just had, scoring all the goals and having all the success at City. It kind of begs the question, what more does he have to do in order to win it? Because, if he matches it again this season, it'd be out of this world. And even if he has half the season, to be fair, it would be incredible. But I just feel like Messi is quite easily a fan favourite. We know the journalists and the players all vote. And again, I'm not bashing on Messi at all. I'm a big fan of his. I think there's plenty of Ballon d'Or trophies in the past where maybe he could have won but hasn't, and we saw Modric win one. Ronaldo's obviously won 5 as well. But it just feels a little bit rough. I think, even as a Liverpool fan, missing out on a lot of these things, City winning these trophies and beating us by a point at times. Last season, we weren't anywhere near it. But I think you just kind of have to take your hat off and give it to him. We saw in the past, people will say that Frank Ribery was potentially robbed in the 2013 season when the numbers he put up. And yeah, maybe there's a little bit of politics involved, the way it's kind of set up and who votes for it. Because to me, I think Haaland's season alone deserves a lot of plaudits. And like I said at the start as well, if you're kind of thinking of a player you want in your team, I think he's now proved wherever he goes, all the teams he's played for, he's guaranteed to get you goals. So if you're looking at an 11 and you want to put a player in there, I think he is definitely one that you would be putting up top at this point in time, just given the conversion rates and the numbers, the athleticism, everything that he's got in his locker is just simply incredible. So that's really the biggest thing for me. I think if you're not going to give it to Messi, you probably have to give it to Haaland, and I would have been leaning towards him. Kevin De Bruyne, obviously a teammate of his, for a while I probably would have said he was the best midfielder in the world, but if we have to isolate the individual year for those players, I think Haaland's year, you just have to kind of put some respect on it and acknowledge how great an achievement that was and the things he did and the trophies he's walked away. So he's got all the individual accolades, he's got all the team trophies, and for me it kind of felt like Messi was just playing the trump card of winning the World Cup, which seemed like it was written in the stars that it was always going to happen. He's someone who is debated as whether he's the greatest of all time, and already to me it felt like he was, but the World Cup just kind of sealed it and it put his name on the map, and it's really secured that. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of point those numbers out. The last point I wanted to make was obviously the fact that Messi's now won 8 Ballon d'Ors. Him and Cristiano neck and neck for years and years. Who's the greatest ever? People have been debating that for so long. But now Messi is just so far clear of him and everyone else winning 8. I just wanted to kind of put the question out whether or not you think anyone will be getting anywhere near that in future. We see the likes of Jude Bellingham, who I've made a video on just previously, and the season he's been having. Is he a future Ballon d'Or winner? He's only 20 years old, but will he go on to win 1, 2, 3? I mean, you start looking at 8. We've obviously got Mbappe now, who's been around for a while. He won the World Cup with France. Unfortunately lost the final, and he's still not won one. But as we see Ronaldo and Messi, we'll see these guys drop off. I guess that award as a whole will definitely start to, we'll start to see a few more names beaten around there, because before it was just completely dominated for 10 years by those two guys. But yeah, definitely drop in your comments below what you guys think. Was Messi robbed? Was he right to win it? Would you put Haaland, maybe someone else? And let me know who you think's a future Ballon d'Or winner, whether Bellingham's got one in future, whether it's Mbappe, whether Haaland will actually get one as well. Potentially someone else, Kevin De Bruyne, who knows, but I'm just thinking, future stars, some of the rising guys who are looking really good, and some future prospects there. So yeah, drop your comments in, make sure you smash the like button, hit a subscribe if you've enjoyed the content and want to see more of conversations like this and football topics. But anyways, that's been all for today. I've been Ant, this has been Red Mate, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.